Okay, so I want to talk to you a little while about my own learnings. Some of it is founded in science. Some of it is founded in the psychology I learned while I studied psychology. Some of it is founded in those early years as a psychologist when you think you've all this book knowledge and you're sitting in front of somebody and they tell you a story and you see the anger or the sadness and you suddenly realize that nothing in the book prepared you for that. And as a psychologist, you're not immune. You're not immune to what the other person is saying. And that sometimes they tell me such a bizarre story that I get caught up in the story and I'm bamboozled. And then they look at me and say, "What should I do, Gerry?" I say, "Geez, I don't know." You're in a tough spot there. Or sometimes you get caught up in the emotion. And in my early years as a psychologist, I really worried about that because I believed people were paying money to come to me to give them the answer. The danger with that was I was putting myself under pressure to have the answers to people's questions. And the minute they'd start talking, I'd be thinking about what's the answer. I need to somehow make this better for them. I need to somehow have something to give them that they can take away and implement. The problem with that was I wasn't actually listening to them then. The more comfortable I became, I realized that how in the name of God am I going to have the answer to people that have lost kids? I've never had kids. There are certain things I just don't know. And I learned sometimes people don't pay to come for all the answers. And they don't pay to come and sit there and tell them what the book says. Sometimes they just say, "Can you listen to me for an hour?" And not judge me. And I'm about to tell you something I've never told anybody else. And would you ever mind just listening? Because I don't know who else to tell this to. And that kind of freed me up then. So, this session is just about being attentive to ourselves. And it's about understanding that sometimes, the solution is always inside. Because as a psychologist, you can't fix anybody. You can't heal anybody. You can only be present to them. You can ask them questions. And in fact, the only power, the only skill that a psychologist has is the courage to say what they see. To name it. To call it out. And to allow the person in front of them to say it. And when they say it, there's no judgment. And it's amazing when people come in, and I've worked with lots of people, particularly high performance athletes, and they come in the first hour is like, "Well, I don't really know why I'm here, Gerry, because there's nothing wrong with me, to be honest with you. I mean, life has never been better. I just kind of said I'd come for the chat, and sure, the team are paying you, so there's no fee to me, so I'm fine, actually." And then they're kind of getting up to go, and they say, well, now that I'm here, I might just pick your brain on one thing. And they sit down, and 10 minutes later, they're in tears in front of you. And then you do nothing, only sit there and listen. And they say it all out. And then they walk up and they shake hands and say, "God, Gerry, thanks a million, that was a great session." It's fine, right? But in this modern world, sometimes, there is so much noise. And as human beings, we want to be the strong one. We want to be the tough one. If we're the parent, we're the solution. We're strong for everybody else. But being strong for everybody else sometimes has a massive impact on ourselves. So where can I be vulnerable? Because none of us are perfect. None of us have it all sorted out. And at times, we lose perspective. At times, we lose sight of what the next step is. So that's today's session. I'm going to start off by undoing a little bit of the beautiful meditation that Miriam did. Because one of the biggest learners that I had was, when I was boxing, I wasn't a very good boxer, but I tried everything to try box. So I went to this breathing coach once. So you have 3 sessions. So the first session he'd teach you how to breathe in. So I became a master of breathing in. So I want you to breathe in, lift the chest, fill the lungs, and 10 deep breaths. Now don't breathe out, because lesson 1 he didn't teach me that. Breathe in 10 times and see how it feels. So I was going in the ring. First round, I was thinking, breathe, breathe, breathe. So for 5 seconds, breathe in really quickly. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How does it feel? How does it feel? Crazy, lightheaded, dizzy. In life, we take on new ideas. We take on other people's problems. We're always the solver, the doer. We're doing what's next. We're always taking on new, taking on more projects. So after about a week of that, I went back to him for the second session. He said, how are you getting on, Gerry? I said, don't how you me. I'm nearly killed. All that breathing in has me exhausted. Oh, I said, don't worry, Gerry. The second is breathe out. Oh, I never thought of that. So now I do what I do. I became obsessive. I want to be the best breather in and the best breather out on the planet. So next fight out in, round starts, I'm like this. I want you to try that for 5 seconds. Breathe in and out as fast as you possibly can. How does that feel? Does it feel any better? Worse. So I'm back to the 3rd session. How are you, Gerry? So don't how are you, Gerry me. If the first thing was bad, that's a disaster. That breathing thing is a disaster. I said, you've forgotten. The most important part of breathing is the pause. You breathe in, and you pause. And you breathe out, and you pause. When you pause, it gives it depth, it gives it rhythm, it gives it timing, it makes sense of everything. Sometimes in life we're so busy going, we're not pausing. And just like the breathing where I was hyperventilating and suffocating, sometimes people are hyperventilating and suffocating in their own life. Because we're not pausing. How's that linked to trauma? When we feel pain in life, most of us, I don't know if it's an Irish thing or a human thing, quick, get away from it. Keep busy, distract yourself. Do more, do more. When you have a pain in your life, particularly in a physical or an emotional pain, the hardest thing at times is to pause and say it. And that's all I do with people. They come in and they talk about everything and they're talking fast and then they start to slow down and you know. And then I say, why don't you just say it? Because you look tired. Or you look sad. Oh, when I look deep into your eyes, I see there's a darkness there. Tell me about that darkness. So this pausing that gives rhythm and timing and depth, it's also this pausing that allows us to stand and say it and feel it. You cannot outrun the things that are in your head. You can't outrun the things that are in your heart. And we can try outrun them as long as we can until that day we sit down. The TV's on the blink. There's nothing to distract us. And there it comes again. So what is trauma? Trauma, sometimes we think of air crashes and we think of car crashes. But trauma comes in many forms. Trauma is nothing more than something that is of high emotion that we experienced that was outside anything we expected. In fact, one of the biggest traumas a human being can experience is the feeling of being unloved or unlovable. If you've grown up in a house, I ask sometimes all these busy people fanatically going at things, fanatically building businesses, who can't stop, who pushing themselves harder and harder to do marathons, and ask, what are you trying to get away from? First question I always ask, what was your relationship with your parents like? when you're 8 and 10, did you feel deeply loved? And it's amazing that if we don't feel deeply loved as a child, we'll spend the rest of our life trying to earn that back. Because that's how I get that's how I justify who I am. I need people to love me. And I find it hard to say no to people. Because that's the emotional need I have. So trauma doesn't have to be a car crash, it doesn't have to be a plane crash. Sometimes it's, in my life, where do I feel loved? More importantly, when I look in the mirror, do I love the person I see? And if I don't, where did that change? Sometimes trauma is you believe as a child that you can sing and dance and you have the spirit and it's funny and you're willing to try everything. And you really believe in yourself, and somewhere, either through a teacher or a parent or someone, you hear this critical voice. It makes you think, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not pretty enough. And then we internalize that voice. And it begins to play in our own mind. And then it becomes our own voice. There was a time in your life when you looked in the mirror as a child and you loved the person you saw. You saw the magic and the energy. You saw the human spirit. You walked around with a nappy with a pot belly on and you didn't care. Because you were too busy being you. Sometimes when you look in the mirror now, what do you say? So sometimes trauma is a voice that I heard at some stage that was external, that made me feel not good enough or uncertain or unsure. And I internalized that. Trauma then moved on, and trauma could be losing a loved one. And we lose loved ones in many different ways. Some unexpected: sickness, car accidents, suicide. And believe it or not, the human psyche is somehow equipped to deal with the fact that we die. We know we die. And even though certain types of death can be very traumatic, there is something in the human psyche that has the ability to understand it. But not suicide. We're not equipped for that. Parents expect to outlive their kids. That doesn't always happen. So trauma is anything that is really emotive and outside of what you expected. The second type of trauma is what I call the frozen present. It's when we take the trauma that has happened to us as a child or somewhere along the line and we replay it again and again and again. The frozen present is where I live in an emotional state of fear or self-doubt or self-criticism that has really nothing to do with what's going on around me. It's something that happened, it's something that I learned. It's an emotional response that I have generated based on something that happened in the past. But I haven't moved out of that emotional response. And your emotion is what drives your thoughts. Your thoughts drive your actions. So instead of worrying about people's actions, look at what's the thought that drives that and what's the emotion. Is it sadness? Is it guilt? Is it loss? And just like breathing, you take in that beautiful rich oxygen, you have to let it go. Because that beautiful rich oxygen, even if I held on to it too long, it becomes toxic. Emotions, events, negative external voices, things that have happened, if we hold on to it too long, it becomes toxic and it begins to make us sick. Letting go is as important, if not more important, as taking on. Letting go is as important as pausing. So we can do meditation and we can do yoga and we can learn to pause. But how do I let go? Who do you speak of it? When do you speak to yourself? The other thing about trauma, and it's the second trauma, and I relate this to physical trauma, so just think of someone that has broken their ankle. And someone says, geez, that looks really bad. I don't think you'll ever play football again. And the first 10 people you meet tell you that. So you think I probably won't actually. So what I need to do now is mind and protect it. So you withdraw from football. And you develop what we call maladaptive behaviours. So someone with a broken leg who's too afraid to go and get it fixed will create a maladaptive behaviour. So they'll say, well, if I walk like this, it's actually not that sore. And you'd be amazed the amount of people who have maladaptive behaviour, or they walk a little bit like this, because somewhere they got a pain in their back. Physically, rather than address the root cause. Or you have a thorn in your finger, and you're going on like this. Ah. And someone says, my mother, give me the needle there and I'll take it out. No, it's all right, it's all right. I'm going on like this. Physically, we have maladaptive behaviours. So that person with the broken ankle spends the rest of their life walking like this. Then it becomes common for them to be walking like that. The people who see them every day think that's just him. They forget that something caused it. And nobody says it. Until he walks into a room with a physio that he's never seen before. And the physio says, I think you've sprained your leg. And I said, oh no, I broke it. Did you ever get it checked? Not really, but a lot of people told me it was broken. That's not broken at all. That's sprained. And I can fix that. What? Yeah, I could have fixed that 20 years ago. And had I fixed that 20 years ago, you could have played 20 years more football. And then their teammate says, and had you played, we could have won the county championship. So the frozen present, if we don't let go of trauma, it traps us. It imprisons us into the same limited thinking about what we can and can't do. Oh, that's just me, sure, I'm always on the go. But what's the cost that's having? Oh, I wouldn't do that because I'm not that self-confident. Why? We carry trauma and we develop maladaptive behaviours. That a maladaptive behaviour allows you to function, it allows you to get from A to B, it allows other people on the external to think you're there. But if we haven't actually released the trauma, we're holding ourselves back. And someday, someone is going to tell you that could have been different. You didn't have to spend the last 20 years of your life running from that. Or thinking like that. That could have been different. So for me, what I do as a psychologist is, I don't give people that many tips or tools or techniques. I ask them, what is it that you need to let go of? What would that letting go look like? What would it free you up to become? What would it free you up to do? Some people say, oh, it would let me just relax a little bit. It gives me back a sense of confidence. When I'm in a shop and I'm trying on a new dress, I could look in the mirror and rather than being self-critical, I could say, actually, I look lovely. It would give me a new lease of life. Trauma is part of life. Sometimes trauma is unavoidable. But replaying and reliving in that trauma is optional. And that is the hardest thing. And I know when you meet someone who has lost a kid through suicide, telling them that you can move on from this, that's difficult. But what's the option? The option is you start to imprison yourself within that. And you start to live your adult life with the same level of self-belief or the same level of self-criticism or the same level of fear that you had when you were 8 years old. To become an adult, I think, is about physically growing up. Of course, you become bigger. But I meet lots of adults that have grown up physically, but never really grown up mentally or emotionally. They're stuck 5 years ago or 10 years ago. To become an adult is to gain that autonomy to grow up inside and to leave certain things behind. So I'm going to do a small exercise. I want you to close your eyes. Just take a few deep breaths. And just take 4 or 5 nice deep breaths with your eyes closed. I want you to imagine that I leave this tent, so you hear me walking out. And one by one, everybody else leaves this tent. And now you're in the tent by yourself. And next thing, someone starts to walk in. And at first you don't recognize them, but then you do. And it's your 8-year-old self. And they're smiling. And for the first time in a long time, they come face to face with the person they grew up to be. And they're proud. And they start to relive what you've relived in the last few years. The ups and downs, the people they lost. And they're real proud that you have the courage to stand up and keep moving forward. They're looking into your eyes and into your soul, and they see the love. And they're proud. But they also look at the way you live your life. Maybe you're always on the go. Afraid to say no to people. Afraid to say yes to big opportunities. Maybe they hear the thoughts that you say to yourself when you look in the mirror. Maybe they hear the thoughts that you say to yourself when you make a mistake. And this 8-year-old self, who believes in you more than anybody else, who just wants you to be happy, and because they know you more than anybody else, they're going to give you a message. And it's a message based on love. And it's going to say, for God's sake, will you just, maybe it's, will you just stop? For God's sake, will you just start? Or for God's sake, will you try to let go? What is it that they're going to tell you? What's the advice? Because today you'll hear loads of great speakers. But nobody knows you more than you. Nobody knows what you need to let go more than you. And nobody can get you to let go until you begin to identify and at least say out loud to yourself. Say it out loud to yourself. What I need to let go of, but also what letting go would look like. That new confidence, that new freedom, that new inner peace, that new smile on my face, the need for external approval all the time, the thing that stops me from doing what I love. I'm going to count from 5. And when I say 1, I want that 8-year-old self to speak loudly to you. So come face to face, get eye contact. And when I say 1, remember they're going to say, for God's sake, will you just, and listen to that advice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What did it say? If you were to take that advice, what would that free you up to do? Who would that free you up to become? What would the letting go of that feel like? You just open your eyes. So just to finish, trauma is anything that is outside of what we expected. But no matter how unexpected it is, we have to get to the stage where we're not saying this can't have happened. We get to a stage where we say this has happened, I have to become present to it. I have to learn to be different in this. Because this trauma can't become my frozen present. It just can't become my new way of being. There is too much life. There is too much passion in your heart. You have too many dreams. There is too much laughter in this love, in this life, for you to not go after. And whether it's someone that you lost, there is no way that they would want you to live in this cycle. And if you came face to face with your old self, what would you say to them? And what would they say to you? End of the day, every single person in this tent has the absolute ability to find happiness and peace. Everybody in this tent absolutely deserves the love and the relationships that you deserve, and you deserve them. Every single human being in this tent has been put on this planet for a purpose, with a light that can be shared, with a passion and a fun that can inspire. Don't just do yourself the service of learning to let go. What a gift that becomes to your family. What a gift it becomes to the people around you when you start to turn up as different. Letting go is not a short-term process. It's absolutely not easy. But it's absolutely doable. I'm not talking about forgetting. There are some people in your life that are too important to forget. But it's about moving forward in a different way. The life, the love, the laughter, the inner peace, the sense of self-love, the sense of pride that you crave is waiting for you when you believe that you absolutely deserve it. And it's absolutely possible. If nothing else today, if you wrote down the one thing that you needed to let go of, that is a monster start. And say it loudly to yourself. Begin to say it. I need to let go suddenly becomes I will let go of. And then you, physical movement, speaking, drawing, crafting, creating, you find ways of moving it out of the mind, out of the body, out of your system in a way. Finally, to finish, close your eyes. Clench your fist really, really tight. Now, into your two hands, you're going to squeeze any self-doubt, anything that we've talked about that could be in the frozen present. I want you to squeeze it in. We're going to take 5 deep breaths. Every time you breathe out, squeeze your fist nice and tight. Fill that into your fist because we're about to release them. I will let go. I will not be defined by. It is time I moved on from. Once and for all, I will stand and face it. 3 more deep breaths. 2 more. And finally, on your last big breath, I want you to release, open the hands, let it go, and see it drift away in the bubble. Just spend an extra 10 seconds. See that go. That's the beginning. And it's only the beginning, but the beginning is a great place to start. When we pause and face it, we start to feel it. When we start to feel it, we start to heal it. Thank you very much. And I hope if there is any question.